Welcome back to another episode of Research Design Build. I'm Steve and this is my channel, and right now we're underneath the stairs in my basement. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Over the last 8 months or so, I have been fully developing and renovating the basement of my house, starting from bare framing all the way through to finishing. I've got a whole bunch of videos that I've sort of cataloged on my channel, going through many of the different processes that are required to finish or develop your basement, and would also apply to many home renovations. So if you're in the same spot as I was and looking to do some work yourself on your house, please check out my other videos. There is a lot of content on the channel right now that will hopefully give you some tips and tricks on how to get professional results from your project. In today's episode, I want to talk about shelving, built-in shelving. I think it is a fantastic sort of finishing touch to your space and adds a lot more usable storage. So here under the stairs, I did drywall and paint everything, which is probably a little bit over the top. I also added in some click connect vinyl plank flooring just to give this a sort of a finished look, so that when you did open the door, it wasn't like you're walking back into the Stone Ages into concrete and all of that, that it still had a nice polished look to it. These shelves are kind of like the last step in sort of finishing off this space and giving it a lot more usability for us as a family. So I want to walk you through the process of building these shelves. Super simple to build. I've got a good process for them. I'll walk you through a fairly simple set that I'm going to build for the mechanical room. But this system, it's modular, right? So, you can adjust the depth of shelf that you want, the length of shelf, but everything from a design standpoint would stay the same. So you can take the principles of what I'm going to show you and apply it to pretty much any type of shelf storage system that you want to build. The uprights will be the same, just with your spacing and your dimensions for thickness, or the width of the depth of the shelf. And the shelf design would be the same. You just increase the length, decrease the length, and increase or decrease the width. Now, getting into cost for this type of a project, lumber prices in the late part of 2020 into 2021 have gone through the roof. At least up here in Canada, it just seems to be a little bit nutty. I did find a huge money-saving tip. I was walking through my local Home Depot and trying to find what material I would use to build these shelves that would be economical and what was the cheapest way to kind of get the look and functionality I was looking for without breaking the bank. And what I found was that they had sort of quasi pre-cut MDF shelving that they were selling. So it was just under 16 inches wide, but they're selling it as a 16-inch wide by 8 foot long, 5/8 thick sheet of MDF. So it's essentially a third of a sheet, like a third of a full sheet of MDF. And a full sheet of MDF right now, I think, is just under $40 for 5/8 up here in Canada. However, they were selling one shelf for like $4.80. But that's a third of a sheet. So for $13 or $14, you're getting a full sheet of MDF essentially by buying 3 of these, pre-cut shelves from them. I don't know whether they didn't update their price or what, but that saved me a huge amount of money. It was less than a third of the cost from a materials standpoint, and a heck of a lot easier to load into the truck and to get home because they're only 16 inches wide. I wasn't dealing with a full 4x8 sheet. Also sped up the process substantially because these shelves back here I used at the full 16 inches wide So the uprights and the shelves, I only had to cut down for length. I didn't have to cut down for width, which saved me quite a bit of time on that front too. So do kind of shop around a little bit when you're looking for your raw materials. Some people haven't maybe updated their pricing, might have some old stock kicking around, and do look for kind of that stuff that maybe you typically wouldn't look for. Normally, I would not buy pre-cut shelving. Usually they kind of charge a premium for that, and you're better off buying a full sheet and cutting it yourself. But in this case, it was definitely not the case. So, make sure you peruse the back aisles of your favorite hardware store and see what deals you might be able to find. So to build these shelves, there's only 4 main pieces that you need to cut. So there's the upright, so that's going to be the full height of for where you want that top shelf to be. There's the shelf itself, so that'll be just the depth and width that you want. And now if you are starting with the pre-cut 16-inch wide shelves, then you don't have to cut for width if you're doing a 16-inch shelf, but your upright and your shelf you'd want to have the same width. Unless you're doing something like this, where this upright is being used for both a 16-inch wide shelf and a 10-inch wide shelf. So those are the first 2 components and probably the most obvious. But because we're dealing with MDF here, one or a couple of things that I've done. Here I've got a 2.5-inch piece of MDF that I've cut. Again, exact same depth as the shelf is. And that I have glued, nailed, and screwed into the upright. And this sets your shelf position. So the reason for nailing, screwing, and gluing, I've got a pin nailer with 1-inch pins in it, and that once I get the glue and I've kind of made my pencil marks, that's very, very fast to secure it in place, so I don't have to use clamps and that sort of thing. And then I'll go back and just add 2 more screws that add a little bit more mechanical clamping force to let the glue set up, and then also long-term as far as load downwards if the glue doesn't hold, because you're gluing sort of 2 finished faces of MDF, which doesn't necessarily glue up the best. And the pins are they're 24-inch or 24 gauge pin nails, so they don't have a whole lot of holding strength either. So that number 8 screw will ensure that it's there for good. So just makes for a really quick installation or build process. You don't need to use clamps on each shelf and that sort of thing. The 4th piece, again, because we're using MDF, is at the back of the shelf. So the shelf is essentially designed with this being the shelf, and then I've got a back piece on it. So for these, they can be 2.5 inches, but I think I've got 2 3/4. For these, it was just a measurement that worked out with some offcuts that I had. And what that's going to do is, because you now have like an L bracket essentially for a shelf, that's going to stiffen that shelf up substantially versus just having a flat MDF sheet straight across. So MDF, unlike plywood, doesn't have continuous strands or continuous fibers running from one end of the board to the other. So over time, it will sag and bow. By creating that L bracket, that's going to stiffen that up quite a bit and allow your shelves to stay nice and flat for longer while holding a larger weight on them. All right, so we're back in the shop here, and we're going to get ready to build the next set of shelves. So this one here that I'm building is for the mechanical room in my house. It's going to be 4 feet long. The shelf width is going to be the 16 inches that these boards are, and it's going to be 6 feet tall. I'm going to start with the uprights first, and so those are going to be 6 feet. I've got 2 boards, and really the key to speeding up the process is cutting things in multiples as much as you can. So I'm going to need 2 uprights, both 6 feet. So I'm going to cut both of those at the same time. I'm going to start by squaring off the ends, because these ends aren't necessarily cut perfectly. So I'll true up the one end, measure from there at 6 feet, and make my second cut for the uprights. So the next step here is to cut the shelves. So I'm going to have 6 shelves for this particular unit. So I've got 3 sheets of the MDF down here. I've also got 3 of these strips, which are 2 3/4 inches tall. And that's what's going to make sort of the L at the back of the shelf to add some stiffness. And I've just placed these beside, because I'm going to cut them all at once. That way they're the exact same length and saves me a lot of time when I'm cutting all the stock. Alright, so to finish these shelves, which is going to be the next portion of the build, is to attach this piece onto the back side of the shelves. So what I'm going to do is I've got a router, and I've set this with a 1/16 roundover bit. And I'm just going to run around 3 sides of the top, or the top of the shelf, and then run around all 4 sides of the bottom of the shelf, just to give it a bit of a round over on the edge. It'll save a lot of sanding time in the end, and you don't really want that sharp edge on your shelves anyways. The reason I'm only doing 3 sides on the top is because this is going to go on there, and I want it to be flush at the back. I don't want 2 roundovers there. I'm going to run around this as well, and I'll round over just one of the top pieces here, just so it's a round over on the top of the shelf, and then both ends. And I will leave the bottom side straight without a round over as it meets up with the shelf. Now to connect them, I'm going to run a bead of glue down the edge that I'm gluing to the shelf, and then I'm going to come by and staple it in. For this kind of application, I like staples. It gives it a little bit more bite rather than brad nail or something like that. Because you are going into MDF. If it was a finished type furniture, I definitely wouldn't be using staples. But because this is going to be on the underside and it's utility shelving, we just need something quick and fast and that will hold well. And so that's why I'm going with these staples. And they are 1.5 inches long, so we'll have really good penetration into the MDF to hold that there. So we'll have the glue and we'll have the staples. If you don't have a staple gun, you can quite easily drill and screw through the top into here. Use 1.5 inch screw, something like that, and you'll also get the same clamping power and that sort of thing. This just goes a little quicker. Alright, so we're almost done. We've got all the shelves built. We've got we just cut up all of the shelf support pieces on the table saw, and off camera there I did run a roundover bit around all of these, so we got the same chamfer on these as well. So you need 2 of those for each shelf. So we had 6 shelves for the one that I'm building, so we needed 12 of those altogether. The top ones, rather than have the flange for the shelf pointed upwards as they will with all the other shelves, the top shelf will actually flip and have it go down. and that'll just make sure that, like, if not, that top bit is going to stick out and isn't going to hit the two side supports. And so by flipping it, it'll go down, it'll make contact, and then it will help with the stiffness and the side-to-side motion of the whole shelf unit. So two of these, you have to take 5/8 of an inch off one side, which will allow that the L part of the shelf to sit down inside. So to secure the supports for the shelves, I'm going to be using a pin nailer. So this is a 23 gauge pin nailer, and it's going to be shooting 1-inch pins. So they're really small, little, thin guys. And why I like the pin nailer is that for this type of application, you can get away without using clamps. And if you had to clamp these all the way down, it would be a real pain in the butt and slow things down. So with this, I can just kind of hold it in position, quickly throw in a couple of pins which will hold it, and then I'll add 2 screws shortly after to really pull it down. Once the glue sets, then everything is good to go. So with the spacing, the biggest thing is to go and measure a few of the things you want to store, obviously, and see what spacing you require. If you're storing paint cans, those can be 8 inches tall, so maybe doing like a 9-inch spacing for them. I've got some Rubbermaid containers that are 15.5 inches tall, and some others that are 19.5 inches tall. So it's going to look the best if you kind of already pre-plan what you want to put in those shelves and really maximize that space. Obviously, if you're sticking a 10-inch paint can or a 9-inch paint can in a 20-inch shelf, you're going to have a lot of wasted space in your shelving unit. So I'm going to sort of stagger these. I'm going to start with some 20-inch shelves, and then probably do 2 of those, and then I'll do some smaller ones up at the top for some smaller items. So with all the pieces sanded, I was able to stand them on end and just sort of tack them together on the top with this one piece of MDF to hold everything up. And then the uprights I have over here just propped up against a couple sawhorses. So through the magic of YouTube, we've got them all painted now. And I used a Fuji Q5 spray gun to spray these. However, you could roll them or hand paint them, whatever you have available. So now we get into the installation, and basically you're just sliding in the shelves and putting in 2 screws kind of on an angle on each side to hold them in. And the first couple will, it'll still be a little wobbly, but as you get up to the top and you get more shelves in, it'll be quite secure. Now the top one, you'll notice we've got the shelf flipped over, so the flange is heading downwards. And again, we're just putting in 2 screws on the top on each side that are going in on a little bit of an angle. I am using number 8 screws, and they're 1.25 inches long. So it's always a good practice to install a screw going into a stud to secure your shelving to prevent it from tipping over by accident. So I've got a spacer here which I put behind the L bracket just to make sure that I'm not bending the shelf or pulling the shelf too far towards the wall with the screw. So guys, thanks for sticking along. I know this has been a long video, but I wanted to show you sort of step by step how to build these shelves so that you can apply this to your own project at home. I find some of the other videos that are out there definitely sort of breeze through the subject. So if this is your first time building something or first time building shelves, I wanted to cover as many steps as I could so that you guys could actually take that and apply that to your own project. Now again, feel free to customize this. The more you customize it to your space, the better your end result is going to be. I would love to see any comments you got in the comment section below. And if you have any questions or things that I can clarify, by all means, please leave those in the comment section below as well, and I'll make sure to get back to you. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next video.